I lost some of y'all probably in the last live. I apologize for that. Hopefully we can keep this live going. Technical difficulties are starting to rear their heads on me now. So that's what we at with the live. But I want to go back to where we was at here, and so we can try to wrap this up. Um, we were talking about if you heard me earlier. I know some people. If you pick up on this live right now, if you picking up on the live that I just came on right now, um, just go to the last. Look for Coach Marvin, the last live stream, and look for the previous one, and you'll see where we picked up at, where we left off at. I want to finish this point because uh, I know it's kind of frustrating on me, but I want to finish this live out. But I know it's going to be choppy because some people going to pick up the second half and be like, "Where? Well, no, what happened? Why coach is starting off right like this?" But go back and pick up the same title where I was at live, and you'll see where it shut off at. And we picked up when we talking about the 5 stages of building the blocks of this culture and where we at, this culture build that we at. And this is where the 5 stages are that we at in this culture build. And this 5 stages right now, we said we was adjusting, and we saying that what's happening now with the players hadn't been testing this culture, but right now we said that what's being tested is the media is testing this culture. The media is testing this culture because they're trying to, and I want to go in depth about what the media is trying to do when they talk about testing this culture. The media is this. Brian Schottenheimer has said over and over again that he wants to have a physical presence to this offense. He has talked about having a physical presence to this offense, but the media is testing this culture, the culture of physicality, because they want to continue to talk about, man, what type of wide receivers, what George Pickens is going to have, what he's going to do, what he's going to add, if Dak Prescott is going to be an MVP candidate. Um, let me explain. Let me say something what about Dak being an MVP contract. Uh, about Dak being an MVP uh, candidate with all these weapons. I don't think the MVP has won the Super Bowl in how many years? So being an MVP does not equate to Super Bowls. I don't think Troy Aikman ever won MVP. I'm talking about of the league of doing the season. Now, Emmitt Smith had, but I don't think so. Being MVP doesn't always equate to wins or to championships. And I kind of got a reason why. Because there has to be more than just one MVP for you to win a championship. Now, do people talk about those other MVPs? But I think sometimes a little less of Dak and a little bit more of others is going to be beneficial for this team. I think if Dak throws for 5,000 yards in this season, of a record-setting amount of yards thrown, I think that's going to be to our detriment and to our good. Now, will it be exciting? Yes. But will it be too much of a load on Dak to maintain to a playoff run? Yes. I say that because there's one key word that's going to be important for us to win a Super Bowl. And the media is testing this culture with this Dak thing. But one of the main things is this word right here. Sacrifice, people. That's going to be ultimately important into our winning a championship this year. There is no great stuff done without sacrifice. We are here because of sacrifices. And if we don't think we need sacrifice, listen, when I hear them talk about exploring Turpin's abilities, when I hear them talking about George Pickens, which I know how talented he is, CeeDee Lamb, how talented he is, I think Ferguson is going to be even better this year if he stays healthy because of those things, his talent. And even with the running backs, I think we got some explosion there. I think we got guys that are hungry. And this great offensive line is when they gel, there's going to be in Turpin and Tolbert and all these. Listen, there's going to be a room for everybody to make plays. But there's going to have to be sacrifices by everyone for everybody to eat and for us to eat, for us to do well. That don't mean the stars don't get the lion's share. But they can't eat it all, and they got to make sure that everybody eats. I think about the lion pack. Yes, the lion and the lioness, the ones, the alpha lion and the alpha lioness, they get their fair share. They get their best of the best cuts, and they eat. But they make sure that everyone else eats because they're going to need everybody in that pack to survive and to prosper. So there's going to have to be some sacrifices to make Turpin a weapon. There's going to have to be some sacrifices to make George Pickens a weapon. Not just this volume stuff, but a weapon that is it can hurt people. There's going to be games that George Pickens is going to do it. CeeDee Lamb's going to do it. Turpin's going to do it. Tolbert's going to do it. We're going to open up for the tight ends to do it. The running game. But everything is built off the physical presence that the media is trying to kill. And I hope Dak understands that a little less of him is more for the Cowboys. A little less is more for the Cowboys. Sacrifice. We may have to sacrifice some MVP votes for championships. I hate to talk about this team, but they had to sacrifice. Brown for the Philadelphia Eagles went from being all-world stats. Now he got hurt, but his stats went down. He had to sacrifice because you brought in a guy like Barkley that demanded that had big numbers, which that took away from his numbers. That took away from some of Hurst's numbers. But they sacrificed, but they still got their stuff done, but they had to give a little because there's only a certain amount to go around. And when you sacrifice, everybody eats, everybody prospers. And this team does. And the same thing is going to go on the defense. And the media is testing our culture at the testing stage of our defense as well, of our culture. Because they're so on what Michael Parsons is going to do. Yes. But Michael's going to find out he's going to have to sacrifice some to make others people better, and he's going to move around, and sometimes he's going to give himself up for somebody else to get theirs. But he's going to find out that he's going to get his too. But we all going to get it because we don't need everybody. Sacrifice. And the media is testing They're testing that philosophy. Are you going to be a physical team? They're testing that. Are you going to fall back into the same traps of exciting football, but not cowboy football? Of what makes you rock. And the reason why I can say that is they're going to test you because they can see that you're changing the right things, but they want you to go back. I was on X earlier today. And Terrence Parsons, to give a shout out, I know he may not see this. He might see this when I post on Twitter. I didn't go live on X. So, but Terrence talked about, well, we know that the Baltimore Ravens signed the defensive back. And he was like, man, the Baltimore Ravens can get everything for Lamar Jackson, which they do. They go out and get players for Lamar Jackson, but they don't give him a number one wide receiver. And he said, and that was a very interesting thing that he said. And he said, it's crazy that they can go out and get everything for Lamar Jackson, but they won't go get our number one wide receiver. And when it gets down to playoff time, right? They run away, they go away from the run game, and they lose. And he said that was crazy. And I posted though, and I thought I said, man, say it louder for people in the back to hear. And our Cowboy fans need to hear that. Yes. There's somewhere down the line, we have watched teams that have had quarterbacks that gotten paid. And everybody talks about how they got paid and can they win a championship, that we put, especially Lamar Jackson and a Dak Prescott, and even a Josh Allen. They're going to want them, they're going to say, they want to talk so much bad about them that when the teams get in the playoffs, they feel they got a feeling of so much pressure to make these guys justify that these guys are the guy, that they go away from what football needs to try to make them the heroes. How many Super Bowls you see? Like Kansas City lost 2 Super Bowls because they tried to make Patrick Mahomes a hero in both of those games. They just said, we're not going to run the football. We're going to let him throw the ball. Both of the games, he threw the ball 50 times in both of the games. He threw it over 100 times to score very little points. And the 3 Super Bowls they won, they were balanced. Even being behind, it was balanced, and they ran the ball when they were playing for the first time. This time they got behind and they said, we just going to throw it. The Seattle Seahawks lost a Super Bowl because people were saying Russell Wilson about to get paid and that he needs to be the MVP. This team should be running behind Marshawn Lynch, and that's he did some game manager and this and that, and the pressure of the coaching staff to try to justify that their quarterback is who we think he is. They put the ball in his hands on the goal line, and not saying he threw an interception. Not saying he threw it on purpose, but it was a bad play call because you went about the wrong reasons. Sacrifice. Because at the end of the day, the wins and losses are going to prove how good you are. I always talk about this scenario. If anybody got older brothers out there, or they're older brother, they got a younger brother, and y'all play basketball in the backyard, and you much older than them, and you got them backing them down, you just beating them to death every game. You back him down, score, bam, he can't win. You win because you back him down because you're so much bigger than him. And he keeps telling you, oh, I bet you didn't back me down, you will lose. And he'll keep on saying that, and then eventually you'll say, okay, now I'm just going to shoot jumpers. And then you almost lose, or you lose. Who fault is you losing? Did he get better? Or he just got you out your game plan that you win with because you trying to prove him wrong. Trying to prove you wrong. If this is where I rock, this is where I'm gonna stay. I'm not changing, do not try to change and try to live up to someone else's expectation. You'll never do it. Because the goalposts will always change. And that's where I'm saying sacrifice. There's going to have to be sacrifice for team. And Schottenheimer been talking about doing it together. So he understands that that's been a problem in the past of hero ball. And now he's trying to say, let's do it together. That's fine. I want Dak to put the pressure on everybody else. I don't want him to take the load and say, well, he's making $60 million. Man, that's just the price. Listen, he's just getting the rates of what the position pays. So that's the stage of testing that we're at the stage of testing, and then we're gonna have to persevere, persistence. We got to stay the course, and we'll see all the persistence and some maturation as they start building certain parts as they get to Oxnard. But those 5 building blocks and those 5 stages is where we going at, where we at. And for people who was not here, that when I went on to the live, they came on live again. Let me go back and share those 2 screens. So, because I know you're gonna be like, well, Coach, we picked you up on the second time, and we didn't. What you talking about, culture and building blocks? Well, the first one I had here was culture. And I remember we talked about this. Go back to my other videos. We have been talking about this for many days. We talk about this about everything because we talked about Schottenheimer trying to build his culture. And we said there's 5 building blocks. But for this, we talked about this all the way back in my first video. So we talked about with this tough season. But there's 5 building blocks: physicality, discipline, mental toughness, coaching/leadership, and talent. These are the fundamental blocks of him. Want a physical team, want a team that's disciplined, that doesn't make mistakes, want a mentally tough team that can handle adversity as well as success and can be able to impose their will on other teams. We want a coaching/leadership. We want leadership from our players, and we want coaching that's teaching our players what it's meant to try to be to be dominant. And we want talent, and we said with the 4 things that coach can do with talent, they only can acquire it, but when coaches must motivate talent, refine it, hold it accountable, and put it in places for it to shine. And that's what they need to do with the talented players. And after we stopped talking about those 5 building blocks, we said, okay, Coach said, well, let's talk about where we at a point of what we have at a point to where we can go back and say, well, we got those things, we built those things, and then we talked about those cultural things that we had, the stages, the energy stage. The first one was the energy stage. We're in the energy stage. The second stage of the culture build is the adjusting stage. We're adjusting. The third, all the coaches are adjusting. We're adjusting. Everybody's adjusting to the new things that are being put in. The third one is testing. It's going to be tested by some players. The coaches are going to be tested by organizations, going to be tested by the media. All these stages sometimes overlap. And then the 4th stage is persistence. Can we stay the course? Can we stay on the cultural course? And then the 5th stage is maturation. We're going to start seeing the growth of what we did. So we got all those things, those stages and those cultural things that we're putting in place. So we're trying to get those things in place so we can try to move on. But sacrifice is a very, very important thing, man. sacrifice is very, very important to this culture, to this season. Is our team going to be able to sacrifice for the good of this team? It's not about numbers. It's going to be about the sacrifice and production. Now, you're going to have some people going to have some great numbers. But we're going to work together as a team and sacrifice for each other. And we cannot put this whole thing on Dak Prescott. Because it's never on the quarterback. I don't care how much the media tells you that. You never see it. If you really look at it, the quarterback, yes, he did his job. What I want Dak to be able to do his job. And I ain't worried about him doing his job. But I don't want other jobs to be overlooked because we want Dak to do more. And let's talk about some quick things right quick about some of the stuff that I picked up on in some of the coaches and talks. You know, I have the coaches mic'd up. Some interesting points that I heard that they could, each group I heard said the same thing. And it came from Schottenheimer. It came from your defensive coordinator. It came from your Schottenheimer said something about it, as well as your defensive line coach said something about it. They talked about what's going to be important for when they come back from training camp. That's going to be one of the most important things for this season. And it was emphasized in a lot of those talks. And it was the word conditioning. And I've talked about this in previous years. Last year, you asked Boss Cowboy Sports, last year and the previous years, I have felt that this Cowboy football team has been a not well-conditioned football team. Now, why is that? One, it might be because we ain't working hard enough. Two, players can get out of condition not because they're working hard, but what they ingest in their body. We're a young football team. And sometimes our eating habits and how we go out and party and stuff like that is not conducive to making a championship run. If some of y'all old enough to remember when Charles Haley got traded here, I think some of y'all going to say Charles Haley getting traded here, the most important thing for Charles Haley getting traded here because he was a great pass rusher. I think Charles Haley had 10 sacks a couple years in a row, but I don't think he had no 14, 15 sack year, no. He was almost on the downside of his sack totals. But his effectiveness, and if you look at when they talked about Charles Haley's story, and you hear Nate Newton talk about Charles Haley, he said when Charles got here, one, Charles tested the culture. Remember I told you, you're going to have players going to test the culture. And that didn't work out well trying to test Jimmy Johnson. Because, see, Jimmy Johnson tested Charles first. Yeah. They almost came to blows. I mean, very arguably because Jimmy got on Charles first. He didn't wait for Charles to attack him. He went out and attacked the yeah. He went and punched the gorilla in the face right off the bat. And he had to have that point where Charles had to tell him, say, hey, man, get off my case. But that was it. He had to go out and show Charles who was alpha. See, the alpha male, the alpha person in the room doesn't wait for the beta to attack. The alpha goes first. And Charles came in here and look at the story. And Nate said Charles knew everything about, because see, Charles was a student of game. Charles was just one of the football, but he was very intelligent about defense. Charles knew what everybody did. He was a student of the game. He knew what everybody did on the football field. Charles Haley. But was he crazy? Yeah. Certified. But when it came to football and sacrificing on the field for his teammates to do well, he was 100 about that, and he was all about that because he was all about winning. And Charles came here and he knew everything about every law because they were battling with the Cowboys. He knew everything, the scouting report on every last Cowboy offensive lineman. Nate said he went down the line talking trash about everybody and about what they couldn't do, what they could do on the Cowboys offensive line. And why would Charles do that? Because Charles said, y'all got the potential to win, but y'all need to be pushed. And the greatest thing Charles did was he told Tony Tolbert, that was he as a defensive end, and he told Nate Newton, he told Nate, say, man, you be blocking all world in the first 5-6 games a year, and then I watch film at you at the end of the year, you gain a few pounds and you get slow, and your game fall off. And he was right. And he told Nate, say, hey, man, you and Tony Tolbert, we're going to meet every morning, 2-3 mornings out, and we're going to work out. And on the they had their off week, they worked out harder. And Nate Newton had his best season because of conditioning. Charles changed the level of how you prepare. He taught his players how you need to prepare to win championships. And that's what Schottenheimer said about when you're talking about building culture. He talked about that. Teaching them how to practice. Charles Haley's biggest asset was not rushing the passer. His biggest asset was showing these guys what they needed to do, and he came in a very hard, harsh manner for what they need to do to be champions. And when Troy Aikman got on people on everybody's case, Charles talked about this. When he said Troy used to get on every player on the offense, when they messed up, Troy get on them hard, and they start talking back to Troy, Charles pick up for Troy. And Charles tells him that's what he's supposed to say. Because he's trying to win. Sacrifice, listen here. Charles said when you run a blitz, when you do a stunt, yeah, you got to sacrifice yourself for the Leon Letts to make that tackle. Or the Russell Maryland or the Tony Casillas. It's about winning, man. And conditioning is the key. I want Michael Parsons to be in better conditioning this year than he was in last year. Because at the end of the season, he wasn't in no shape. Now, somebody might be on this and they may say, oh, well, this here. My main man, Terrence, if you get on this, he wasn't in no shape. Not in the shape he should be in. And I say that because, one, it's going to translate into everybody else. And two, you're most vulnerable to get hurt when you're not in shape. Gilmore I remember Gilmore said he coming here, I remember last couple years ago, and Parsons talking about Gilmore and Cooks had him on some type of diet. Because Gilmore knows about conditioning and eating right. That's what keeps him in the league for 14, 15 years. You ain't gonna be eating hamburgers and hot dogs and stay in this league 14, 15 years. That ain't gonna happen. So, yes, conditioning and sacrifice. Two great things, man. And as my show says, this is the peace. Work in peace. And I'm gonna say this again, and it may not be the right time to say it, but I'm gonna say it. But please don't take it for nothing wrong. I understand what times you are, but I'm just making this metaphor for football purposes. Those who sweat more in peace bleed less in war. And that means those who gonna work in this point of time right here, between now and the time we get to training camp, is gonna have less failure when we get to training camp. This is the time you got to put in the work to be ready to come into training camp. Those who sweat more in this time are going to have less failures when this thing start, because it starts when in July, when it starts, you are in full season of battle. So what you do now is going to prepare you to be victorious or be able to sustain the test of what this long season going to do. Now, you can come into training camp halfway out of shape, and the people who come into training camp halfway out of shape because they done took these last 4 weeks and they went all and hanged out and drunk beer and partied and vacation and whatever condition they had from OTAs, they come here in the training camp, and then if they're a second string guy or they're a guy that's in the rotation, I'm just telling you, if I was shot now, I'll cut their ass. Because I can kill another guy in the rotation. We can pick up another guy from another team that's out there for rotational purpose. And they're a guy that's a starter, I'll find me somebody else to start. Or I'll belittle them in front of the team. Because if you get anybody that comes back in this thing that's not in tip-top shape, they're testing the culture you're building. And you got to handle tests with a stern hand. So we're going to see how serious this team is about how they come back. And is their focus and their work ready for in peace, going to make them ready for the storm that's coming up. As I said again, thank you, Kevin. Thank you, Joe, man, for calling. I'm always from Italy, man. You're always in here, man. Thank you, Charles Baker, man, for coming in, man. Listen, y'all like and share. Not as many people in the chat as well. We got a lot of content creators right now out. There's a lot of stories out there. Remember, man, there's going to be a lot of stories out there that's going to have us jumping around. And I want to say this. Know why we're jumping around sometimes as creators and content creators and media sources? Is because if you ever had a big cookout or you ever had a big party, or anything, you're going on a cruise, anything big, you are so anxious that all the preparation you've done, and you're going to outthink yourself by, man, I need to get this better. Maybe I need to get this. Maybe I need to go get the bigger grill. Maybe I need to go get some this or that, whatever. because you want things to be perfect, and you want to be prepared for it to be right. That's what we're doing. But right now, there's gonna be a lot of different groceries brought. It's gonna be some more groceries brought in because it's gonna be acquisitions and stuff gonna happen. Yeah. But right now, majority of the groceries are in the cupboard. Now it's time for our coaches to do what they get paid for and what they've been doing all their lives. To bring the talent out, to put everybody in a cohesive group that works like an orchestra, the instruments in an orchestra. And when they play their music and they play their part, it sounds like Beethoven. Yes. It's time for them to put those groceries together and make that masterpiece of a meal that's going to last 22 weeks. That should take us past the Super Bowl. So we got to trust them now. And I hope they ain't running from coaching. But it's time for them to go to work. Like I said, man, if you're picking up on this, remember, this is the second part of this. The first one, my screen went out. I had an interruption of the channel. It went out, and I lost the screen. I don't even know. I'm hardcore in this, and it still went out. Now, I can't even understand how that happened. But it went out, so I'm going to put a thumbnail to this. I'm going to probably put thumbnail part 1, and then I'm going to put a thumbnail part 2 so people can understand that this is part 1 and part 2 for the 2 thumbnails out there. So thank you again for all you have done. Thank you for following me. If you look on this on YouTube, please like, comment, and subscribe. Let's try to get me up to 350. Trying to get to 350, 400 subscribers before we get to the 4th of July. I know that's a push, but with you, I can do all things. And we're going to come back with another video. But until next time, Coach Marv is out. Peace.